Hello everybody and welcome back to another On the Workbench session. This one's going to be a short one, I promise. I think it's going to have something interesting for you. So I was working with some of those, remember we just used these in our basing techniques video with the foliage, but I, for the heck of it, just did some old patterns that I'd done years and years ago. Used to do these on my Celtos figures all the time. And you can see they're kind of all over the place here. Even got some over here. Consider it basically a test run for the Splintered Fang over here, which are going to have some of the white added to them. I think that's what I'm going to go with. I was thinking red on the skin, but I think I might go with white. Could be interesting. But these will be more like tattoos. The other one's going to be more like war paint, necessarily. You can see there's kind of a distinct theme here with all of these spirals and swirls. And we'll see what we can do with this. See some of these pointed spirals like this. Again, it's something that I did all the time on my Celtos figures. It's not a super complicated thing. It is not that difficult at all. And what we're going to do is I'm going to try and do that on our other guys here. So I've got 5 of these that I think are not too shabby candidates for it. So we can do some of that over here, possibly some of that right over here too. And now some of them are a little bit darker than others, but obviously there's a perfect one here. Spiral on the arm. An open spot here for a spiral on his head. And we're going to do these in oils, just so that you know you can do it. Now, of course, the figures are dry at this point, but these two will play a big role here. So this is the cadmium green and the phthalo green. Also got things like the olive green, titanium white. And if need be, I can always just make a little bit of a skin tone out of this. As I got to say, the burnt sienna. So we'll have this in reserve. We've got the usual oil painting palette here, piece of cardboard, piece of parchment paper glued to it, same exact parchment that we typically use when we're doing our acrylic painting on our wet palette. So yeah, I'm gonna see what we can do here as far as just some tattoos on this, and actually then we'll follow this up with another one where we do the blood effects on our weapons. Okay, so let's get that oil paint out on the palette. Let's get some brushes and let's see what we can come up with. So let's roll on here with some of our usual white spirits. Now this again, from Speedball, you could use Winsor Newton, you could use Grumbacher, Holbein. There's a whole lot of different ones that work. We're just going to throw those right in here. And you see we don't have a whole lot of paint out there. We don't really need a whole bunch. Now, what we also have, there's some of our really beat up brushes that only have the one hair left, which for these purposes are sort of on the ideal side here. I mean, yeah, you end up with that. That's gonna be very helpful. But first we're gonna mix up some of this. Let's get some of this mixed up here. I'm gonna use a different brush and we'll make a few different greens for ourselves. There's our 3 greens over here. And the key with this is going to be that balance of kind of the age-old thing of freehand, right? How thin is that paint going to be? Now, fortunately with the oils, since they are technically kind of thinner than water, technically they are, you can actually get away with thinning these down more. And unlike, say, water-based acrylics that are always going to be a certain thickness because water can only be so thin, these can be, oh my gosh, you'll be surprised. At least I think you will be at what you can do. So this is some of the phthalo green, really going heavy on the olive green here, and you can see it's almost like we're making a bit of a wash, right? And actually that, I'll bring up the one that we painted before and talk about that for a second. I just wanted to get some paint out here. Now, this was actually done over wet paint, just so you know. Yeah, all of those were done over wet paint. Here, you almost have an even extra advantage because the paint it's all dry underneath there. Because it had to be dry so that I could do all that fun plant life, right? In the last basing video, And what I'm going to do is just give that a bit of a test there. So that's nice and thin. Because what we wanted to do was have more of a tattooed sort of a look as opposed to the war paint look. And, it's. How can I say this? It's a subdermal type thing. So you're trying to have it look a little bit transparent instead of, well, painted on. All right, I think we are mostly good to go here. Now really zoom this in so you could hopefully see what we've got here. And I'm going to use this other one here. 1 second. Sometimes I can never tell which beat up brush I'm using. Well, it's all got to start somewhere, right? Start there, and now we're going to arc around. Now, if it's too thin, I can always get more paint in there. Not a problem. It's sometimes good to sort of work it both ways. A little thicker, a little thinner. Yeah, I don't want that to get too dark though. So we're going to add a little bit of our cadmium green to that. And if I don't like it, I can just wipe it right off. That's the nice thing about that. And sometimes it's not bad to also warm up on something else too. But you see how the spiral starts to build off of it, and see how that's kind of, it's not as heavy as what was over there. See how it fades here a bit. This is a little bit easier to do with the oils than it is with the acrylics, and I can say that for sure. Now another little tattoo pattern that's kind of fun to do sometimes. Quick little thing. It's not really all that difficult. It's a little bit of an armband. Here, let's get rid of some of this. There we go. And you see how we've just kind of attached some, literally just some curved inverted triangles. That's all it was. Nothing terribly earth-shattering. I will say this too, if you have some really neat things going on with the skin tone in an area, maybe you just don't do the tattoo thing there and just leave it. But here we're going to do another one of our little arcs there so you can see how thin that is. And it's subtle. Now here, there's kind of a little blob of skin tone there, so maybe we do something over the top of that, and maybe instead of always a spiral pattern, we do something like this. And you see how it's got a little bit of a, like a hook there? And then we'll do that also on this end. See how it's got two points on the end of it? And this goes back, oh wow. This pattern, I think I've done this same pattern for probably 17, 18 years. It's an old favorite. See how we just sort of magnified that a little bit, made it a little heavier. Then we're going to do a couple more of our, see these little hooks on the end, so it's sort of a partial spiral there. And I can have another one So see now, look at that. It starts to all of a sudden, the skin tone looked neat before, right? But this just, I don't know. I think it gives it a little extra spice, a little more than maybe what it had previously. Now, in an ideal world, this happens before all of that foliage gets added. That's now hanging off the edges that I got to be really careful not to destroy. But then I just happened to do the pattern on that one figure. And well, I knew I was going to be doing the splintered fang, and I wanted to have some kind of pattern on there. But then I thought, well, that is going to be different than this. And I thought, okay, even this is not a terribly long tutorial. If it's only like a half hour long or whatever, and I just do a few figures, this is more about seeing is believing for the folks that maybe aren't entirely convinced that you can do really nice, thin stuff like this over with oil paint. Now, as much as I like what was happening here, I'm going to do the thing on the head here first. Let's do that first. Now, there's a couple different. I did the spiral on the other one. But what I could also do is maybe something like this. Again, a small spiral there. When I feel like there's some extra on there, I take some of it away. And kind of maybe build a few more little arcs of green like this. And then up here on the back, it's almost like I can carry that pattern a little bit maybe. So that this full head crest thing doesn't look like it divides his head in half so much. And carrying something from the other side, some part of the pattern from the other side, and then down here. And I usually, when something like this, I'll do it like a tattoo pattern on one leg or one arm. So if I do one on this arm, like a spiral, I just do one of those, not necessarily a spiral on every single arm. Remember how we talked about with freehand, where it is just more of a suggestion than anything else? Well, that's what's happening here. We're making these a suggestion of a tattoo, not necessarily drawing out every last line. Here's another. Can you see that? I think now you can maybe see it. We put our little hook there. And once again, because this is nice and thin down, it's not going to be so overpowering. So see how that interacts with the rest of that pattern there. We can even, like this. It really is just sort of a simple way of adding a lot of extra flavor to these guys. I think I first saw it on the Celtos figures that we were doing back in the day. What was the other one? The Rackham figures, the confrontation figures also did lots of tattoo patterns like this, and they just sort of stuck with me ever since. These are just some really simple things like that. And let's say you don't maybe like something that happened. Well, make yourselves a little bit of a skin tone here. We're actually going to use the green as a yellow. Where are we at here? So I can go from the other side here a little bit. right here. Maybe that nub is a little too big. So I can make that, I don't know, manipulate it, make it a little bit more clean. Look at this, I can even just add it a touch more. So this, like I said, it's not a big deal. Look, I can even add some highlights to my skin while I'm thinking about it here. I can add some more stuff to the... I don't want to add anything to the weapons because I've got to add blood effects to those. But I think you're getting the idea of what's supposed to happen there. So we've got all the tattoo stuff going on with his, like, here. Maybe not over here. We've got this on the shoulder here. Just one of the shoulders. Now I am going to, I think on his head here, make a little adjustment to... There. Actually, basically I just added some more highlights to his head, but what that does is it makes the pattern stand out slightly more. And there you go. Yeah, oh, what the heck? What the heck? I'm going to take some of my green here again. And on this hand here, because I wasn't necessarily super entirely thrilled with everything on the hand, so I just maybe did a little bit of a tattoo here on the hand, or some kind of a design on his hand. So there's basically a little test figure, just kind of setting things up here, figuring out what sort of design maybe we like and what we don't do. But we'll see if we can do some variations of this on the other figures, and we're going to do that next. It's time for round number 2. Round number 2, and I make sure I got enough of this ready to go. I am going to throw a little more maybe of the cadmium green in there. And I think that's both thick and thin enough. Ooh. Which way to go? Which way to go? I'm going to go this way, I think. And we'll start again with another. I might make sure I got a little more paint on there so that it flows. We start up, gotta start somewhere. And then we build up. Ah, good, you can see that. And we start to build up around that. But remember, the oils underneath there is dry, so if I wanted to, I could quite literally just wipe this away and it's gone. Like it was never there. Like it never actually happened. It might be interesting to carry that pattern down on the shoulder in a small way like this. And then, and it's also neat to, when you have something like the strap there, if it's possible to have the pattern be partially underneath it, makes the pattern again look more like it's part of his, it's part of him, as opposed to the pattern somehow neatly avoided being covered up by this strap. Not sure how it happened, it just did. And you see how I actually let some of the... Can you see? Okay, yeah, you can't tell. I was worried it was blocked by the weapon there. But I will let the brush kind of lose some of that paint with the idea that it also starts to get a little more faded. It starts to look more subdural, or subdermal, I guess I should say. So let's see, we're getting our spirals in place. Now I think I'm gonna do something. See, this is it's kind of difficult here when it's just like a cloak with all those undulations, right? Which means maybe here, if we're gonna do some kind of a pattern, maybe it just is simpler, not as complicated, and it's only gonna be over here. Ideally, maybe it's much more complicated than that, but remember, we're still kind of thinking army painting here, and we're just trying to get the most for the least. The least amount of time and effort and maximum result. Once again, like before, we want this to be partially covered by some of our other design elements. It really makes it look more like it was always there instead of you have cleverly painted it on there. Now here's some of that hook design that we did earlier, kind of a flattened curve with a bit of a hook on the end of it. With all the while, just that reassurance that if you just don't like it, and it's not even like you have to add white spirits to your brush to wipe it away, you just maybe take a sponge and just wipe it away, and it is gone, and that is it. No need to worry about it anymore. You could just say it was something that you tried and it just didn't work out the way you wanted it to. Now there's some other guys here that have much darker skin. Not quite sure how that's going to play out. And actually, what I just did over there, I don't know if you saw that on the fur. I needed to get a little bit of extra green paint off the brush, so I literally just painted something there, wiped it away with my hand, because that's what you can do with the oils. It's like it has its own eraser built in. Now, potentially a disadvantage too, because, well, it's its own eraser, which means that you would want to be a little bit careful with these guys until your patterns have dried. We'll say that. Okay, one more. Again, a pattern. You can't even see that here. You'll never even know it's there, but it's something that I can build off of up here. And we call that, we say, you know what, I'm going to actually do a little bit of something here along his neck, if you can see that. I think you can. I don't think it's blocked by that bone axe or whatever he's got. So just, again, some simple stuff here. Where's my, I'm just going to throw that into the pile of ones that are going to dry. But then, this one is our best opportunity right here. It starts from underneath there. See how it's basically a flattened curve. It's almost like an eye shape. And you see how we extend. I figured this one would be a good one for and you could really see how that pattern builds on itself. And now we're gonna go up like this, and then we'll put the hook and the flattened curve on the other side. Can you see? I know it's got a little bit on the shiny side. And we just sort of do more and more and more of this. I'm gonna put more of the design down here. And maybe this is a little bit less of a flattened curve, more of a regular curve there. Make it look like it goes down this part of the leg here. Let's do some stuff on the inside. If you can see it, you'll be able to see this. It continues here. Another one of those curves, but you see how it now becomes more of a suggestion. It's almost kind of disappearing here. It's in shadow anyway. Why would I want that to just be so overwhelming in a shadow area? Same goes right here. As long as you can see this, I'm going to try and put something here. I'm going to look at the screen. I think you can see it. And this one, instead of that longer stretched out curve, it's going to have a different type of curve to it. More like I guess more like a wave there almost. And there's another little line that builds outside of it, sort of like the spiral that we built on some of the shoulders. And you can also just look at references, right? Just go on to do the Googles, find some patterns. I fully intend to do that for the white patterns that we're going to be putting on the Splintered Fang. This one right here, it was really more nostalgia than anything else. And once I realized how long it had been since I'd even done anything like this, I was like, I gotta do this. I haven't done this in so long. Why not? I think because I've done so many historical figures and not really a lot of fantasy figures, well, there hasn't been time for this. Now we changed this a little bit here. It's very simple. It's a line and then some triangles attached to it. That is not super hard. Maybe just practice it on a sheet of paper or draw it first. Do it with a pencil, then do it maybe larger with the brush and keep practicing, and then when it's time to do it on the figure, that the ye old muscle memory is going to start clicking in, right? I'm going to see if I can't get a little bit right. Yeah, there we go. That's nifty. And like I said, it's just a suggestion. You probably, a lot of these things, if you were to do the whole approach it from 4 feet away, you might not even know they're there. Might not even see them. But upon further inspection, you could add more to it. We could add some dots on the end of those. We could build more on it. Let's go on to our next one here. Now, this is another one of those cases where, as much as I'd love to do a tattoo over that, I'm not quite sure that's what we want to do, because I like so much of what's happening there. Maybe a tattoo almost interferes with it. It might actually interfere than more than anything else. Now here, instead of maybe a spiral pattern, I'm going to do 2 parallel lines. And you see, we just kind of let those fade away. And then maybe this little circles in here. It's a very simple design. It's just, how hard is that? 2 lines, couple of dots. Doesn't have to be hard. Maybe here I sort of indicate there's a little bit of a spiral right there. And then we continue some over here. Yeah, we go. On the leg here, he's got that cut, so we have to be a little judicious with what we add here. It's not going to be very much. I want to let that little cut be the dominant thing here on his leg, and just have these markings here be a secondary thing. So you barely really notice that they are actually there at all. Again, just a hint here. Not going to do it, but I think I might do it actually over here. Once again, it's a pattern that is mostly hidden anyways. And I will now, if possible, we're going to hint that there is a spiral underneath that strap. See that? All it was. It's half hidden. Oh, it's a couple of semicircles. Couple of semicircles. All it took. That's it. All right. I will, for this last guy here, let's do one more spiral on his shoulder here. Now this has obviously darker skin, so it will not show up as much as the other guys did, but it's all good. All good. Build up some more here. Any other? Let's go with. I might actually make this a little darker. So we're gonna put a little more of the phthalo, a little more of our olive green to. And now I made it a little bit darker so that it would show. Here we go. Ironically, you're going to see it as the shinier, lighter color, which is kind of funny. But much like we did the other one that was sort of running, I'm going to add a couple of these, sort of, again, the flattened out spirals. When you think about your tattoos, there's sort of two ways you can go. And something like this, which is more of a flourish, it's more of a curvy design, and then there's also the kind that's just almost, I don't want to say mechanical, but it's definitely more straight lines as opposed to something like this. And then there's ones that just have more dots. Like I said, it never hurts to just use the Googles for what the Googles were meant for. That's what they're meant to find out those things, like, all right, what does a Maori kind of tattoo thing look like versus this versus that? Why not just be curious and go look it up while I'm here? And this is the other thing too, is sometimes you just see something like here. Look at how much lighter that little piece of tooth or bone or whatever that is can be. Alright, so that almost does those guys. Now, do I want to play with these? Now, these are actually done in acrylics here. Now, I've got so many fun things going on with their skin tones. I will just leave those be, and we'll just maybe say that the leaders don't have to get that. They don't need tattoos. They're leaders, right? So we've got the design that I sort of established on that one. Now we've done it on a few of these guys, like so. And what we'll do is we'll get some pictures taken of this, and then we'll have them ready to do blood effects, which will be our next on the workbench video right after this one. I want to say thanks to everybody, as always. I hope these kind of things are helpful for you guys. They just give you some ideas, some thoughts, stuff you can do on your own, figures, and especially just at times like this when things are unusual. The support always appreciated. Here, I'm gonna just see right there. Look, there was an area of the size that, you know what? I need a little more contrast right there. Same thing here. So I think that's the nice thing about the oils is, yeah, okay, it's dry, but then you do some of the other things that maybe are easier or helpful to do when it's dry. You don't always have to do the oils when everything is wet. Sometimes it can be just as relaxing painting over dry oil paint as it is painting over wet, maybe even more. Well, thanks again, everybody, and I'll catch you on the next On the Workbench.